The shock doctrine by Naomi Klein might give some more insight into what one can expect in the coming days and weeks in Venezuela. Hey, you don't need to tell me, buddy, okay? I'm familiar with her work. The shock doctrine is maybe one of the most important pieces of political writing done in the past half century. Like, if you want to understand why the world is as crazy as it is today, you need to understand the way we reacted to the end of the Cold War. There was a brief window of time after the Cold War where obviously things were going to be bad for the former Soviet Union no matter what, because they were having their own collapse. But there was a moment where we could have reached our hand out and said, listen, let bygones be bygones. Capitalism won. Let's work together on this. And I'm not a capitalist, but that would have been a hell of a lot better than the world we got, which is where the Western business class looked at Russia, looked at the former Soviet states, and basically said, oh my God, we can rape them. Like, we can humiliate them. We can punish them for a half century of opposing us. For a half century, they have kept us from taking over the entire world. They kept half the world away from our business ventures. We're going to fuck them up. And then we did. We engaged in punitive economic exploitation. We engaged in business practices that were knowingly destructive for them and not even really beneficial for us. Like, how much has Western business benefited financially from the state of Russia today? You know, I understand they get a lot of money out of their petrostate, but we deprived them of the resources that they could have used to properly modernize, and we would have been wealthier for it. Like, we fucked over everyone, and now they're our enemy, and we deserve it. Didn't the same thing happen in East Germany too? Yep. When Germany was reunified, Western Germany was like, ew, they're fucking stinky, bro. They're poorer than us. Ew. And as a consequence, like, the East Germany was subject, or what was formerly East Germany when it was reintegrated, was subjected to a fuck ton of condescension and economic deprivation and underinvestment. And that's why the AfD is so popular there, you know? And then West Germans paid hundreds of millions to the East and they squandered it all? Well, yeah, but that wasn't like good investment. Like, the money West Germany spent on East Germany, in a lot of cases, just got bled out into underdeveloped, corrupt political infrastructure that wasn't rebuilt properly after reintegration, or that money was like siphoned back out by Western German businesses. Basically, Western German businesses moved into East Germany and siphoned out the money that was poured in, rather than the money being like equitably distributed in a way that benefited the community and like reintegrated them and made East Germany feel like they were, you know, stronger and more on par with West Germany. They treated East Germany basically like a foreign country, you know? It's fucked up. What was the book? The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. Very important book. Very, very important. Why didn't glorious Soviet socialism result in East Germany having more money? Because the point of Soviet occupation was to strip Germany and enrich the elite of the Soviet Union? What? Wait. What did I say that made you think I was defending the Soviet occupation of East Germany? You're acting as though I'm suggesting that... What? Also, East Germany wasn't gutted to enrich the Soviet elite. That's not really how it worked in the Soviet Union. Like, the reason people were poor in the Soviet Union wasn't because all the wealth was being sucked up by a couple of, like, party bureaucrats or whatever, you know? They had serious structural economic issues, and a lot of the inequality was caused by the party, but that's more of a capitalist mode of inequality. Like, that's the reason why Americans are poor. The reason American poor people are poor is because all their money is getting hoovered up by Elon Musk or whatever, right? Like, the extractive element of the economic superstructure, that's what caused it. In the Soviet Union, a lot of it genuinely was mismanagement, often malicious mismanagement, but it just didn't take the same character, you know? Well, Ukraine's a big example. Oh, to be sure, to be sure. I mean, it's not to suggest the Soviet Union didn't engage in colonialism. It certainly fucking did. But it's, there's a different character to it. I just want to be particular, you know? Like, when people in the Soviet Union were poor, it wasn't like a bunch of rich fat cats in Moscow were like, yes, we'll pay them less money and then we'll have more. It didn't really work that way, right? They were still corrupt and they were still dictatorial, but the dynamic of extraction worked differently. It wasn't as porky coded. I asked so you could explain that. Oh, well, East Germany was horrendously mismanaged, and the Soviet economic model didn't work. Capitalism was better than what the Soviets were doing, which was like inefficient, mismanaged state capitalism. They didn't have public ownership of the means of production. The Soviet Union never achieved socialism. They never even achieved widespread worker cooperatives, right? Let alone the end of the market. I mean, they were so far behind. They were basically just doing a less efficient version of capitalism. That being said, the areas where the Soviet Union did away with traditional market mechanics and just like straight nationalized stuff, like for example, housing, worked out kind of well. Like the Soviet Union did really, really well on housing. Soviet citizens paid relatively like nothing, like peanuts. They paid peanuts for their apartment blocks. And were their apartments kind of shitty? Yeah, but like relative to what they had before. Keep in mind that before the Soviet Union, Russia was literally a feudal peasant state. They had a czar. And over the course of a couple of decades, despite the Cold War and the ravaging of World War II, which deprived them of so many people and so much money, they were able to kind of build everyone apartments. It's pretty impressive. Yeah, people in Russia were living in fucking mud huts. They were living in fucking animal fur yurts before the Soviet Union. And that's not because they were backwards. They were just fucking poor. Everyone outside of Moscow and St. Petersburg and shit was poor. We could learn from the Soviets in this respect. Not in most ways, but with regards to their handling of housing. We could also learn from Cubans for their healthcare. True. Most of us in the military are just poor and want a stable job with free healthcare, but the special ops guys are always bloodthirsty psychos. I met a few in boot camp and they talk about ending lives with such enthusiasm. Yeah, it works like that in pretty much every military, you know? Most people are normal and don't really like killing, and then you run them through basic training, you run them through combat, or, you know, whatever, sitting at a base doing nothing all day, and you try to identify which of them are the most aggressive, the most willfully violent, the most sociopathic, and then those people are selected, they're targeted by the military, and they're chosen to work in special forces. It's like that in every country. Special forces guys are always freaks. What would you do if you were drafted? I don't fucking know. Not comply, conscientious objector. I'm not doing that shit. Fuck that. I would be drafted, say I'm not complying with illegal orders, then fight it out in court. I don't care. Well, I do care. That would really suck, but I'm not doing that shit. Sorry, I have autism. I would simply say I'm too autistic. I would gain a bunch of weight really quickly so that I'm not capable of passing basic standards.